Good evening, everybody. My name is Joanna Collentine-Kerr, and I'm the Executive Director of the North Andover Historical Society. I am so excited this evening to introduce the Commonwealth of Massachusetts State Auditor, Diana DiZoglio, as the first speaker on our Women's History Month programming here at the North Andover Historical Society's Worden Theatre tonight. As a former state senator, state representative, small business owner, and nonprofit project manager, Auditor DiZoglio's history in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors has provided her with well-rounded insights around the real and pressing needs of working families across Massachusetts. She's used those insights to work alongside elected officials, labor, community advocates, stakeholders, and everyday working people throughout the Commonwealth, cities, and towns. Leading the Office of State Auditor, Auditor DiZoglio is committed to help move Massachusetts forward by working to increase transparency and accountability in state government and ensure that everybody, no matter our family background, bank balance, or zip code, has a state government that works for them. Tonight, I've asked the auditor to share some of her insights on women and non-disclosure agreements for Women's History Month, a subject that is very close to her heart. You may have noticed there's a lot happening here in this building at the Stevens Center. Please check out our new exhibits, including our Harnessing the Power of the Sun and our Preserving the Past, Protecting Our Future wing, which is out on to the right, beyond the lobby area. And over the next 2 years, we'll be adding new exhibits focusing on our local history and sustainable stewardship. Please also stay tuned for our exciting new exhibit in April called The Aspirations of Ordinary People, and programming here in the Worden Theatre to commemorate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. There's more information on our website, northandoverhistoricalsociety.org, regarding this programming. I just want to remind you of a couple of key points before we introduce the state auditor. Please make sure your cell phones and any other noisemakers are on silent mode during the program. Please refrain from eating and drinking in the theatre unless you have water. The both bathrooms are through the boardroom and on your right-hand side. And then finally, just in case of an emergency, there are 2 emergency exits. One is the door that you came in, and one is here to your right. Please help me give a big round of applause now for our State Auditor, Diana DiZoglio.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Am I talking into this? Where?
You are. You're on microphone.
No microphone or anything? I mean, I'm pretty loud, everybody. I'm an Italian American from Methuen, so.
The freedom of the stage.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Joanna. Can we please give a round of applause? Thank you so much. Just done amazing work and just bringing us together in this community, making sure that we have the opportunity to connect with one another. And thanks so much for inviting me as a local person, local elected, someone who, someone who used to serve as your state representative and hasn't seen my senior center friends in a little too long.
The senior center all the time.
How's everybody doing? I miss you.
Wellesley 48.
Wellesley, exactly. I'm a Wellesley College grad. That's what she's referring to. And I saw the new building that y'all got, and I still have not gotten an invitation. So we're going to be calling everybody over there. Thank you very much. I'm being sarcastic, but thank you so much for coming out today. It's really great to see you, and it means a lot to me that you came out. It's been a very busy time. My name is Diana DiZoglio. I am your state auditor. A little bit about myself. Some of you haven't actually heard my personal story, maybe ever, because when I served as your state rep, I sort of just came in and was able to work alongside of many of you. But I don't know that I've ever had this type of an opportunity, Joanna, in North Andover. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to share my personal journey because, you know, especially during Women's History Month, I've been going around and telling younger women especially that the stories that they have to share about their own experiences are powerful. Our stories are powerful. What we've experienced is powerful. And as women, a lot of times people want to make us afraid to shine our light, to tell our story, to tell the truth about what we've seen and witnessed and experienced. And it can be challenging sometimes to be our authentic selves and share who we are, what we're all about, for fear of judgment, for fear of retaliation, for fear of being dismissed or ignored or disenfranchised or treated like, you know, we might be being a little bit crazy or too passionate for our own good or too aggressive in what we're trying to say and do and accomplish. And I have had the opportunity to go around and especially speak with younger women, but to be here is especially heartening because this is the original district that I represented when I first started actually running for office many, many years ago. I was born to a 17-year-old single mother, not far from here, back in 1983, so I'm 22, and was born in Holy Family Hospital. And I ended up moving around quite a bit during my childhood, depending on where my mom could find work, as a young nurse's aide at the time. And she worked all over, actually North Andover, Lawrence, Haverhill, Methuen. We moved a lot back and forth between Methuen and Lawrence based on where she could find work and housing. Did a lot of couch surfing when I was younger. Housing insecurity was a pretty big issue back then. And ended up going through our local public school system, graduating from Methuen High School, and going off to Middlesex Community College, which was an associate's degree that I could afford, thanks to our state's investments in families like mine. And from there, I ended up getting a scholarship to Wellesley College, and was able to become the first in my family to graduate. And really knowing that it was others' investments in me inspired me to give back to our community in whatever way I could. And since I couldn't really do so financially, I got into community service. I served at the United Teen Equality Center in the city of Lowell. I also served at Girls Inc., helping to run their after-school programs, and worked at different nonprofits and community and youth centers through the years, simultaneously waiting tables as a waitress, as a server, and cleaning houses, actually, to make ends meet. As many working families know, you might love what you do for a day job, but it doesn't always afford you with the opportunity to live with a standard of dignity in the community that you're working hard to serve in. So I was doing all of these different jobs during that time period, had my day job, had my side gigs and all of that. And it was during that time period that I actually got offered a job working at the State House. And full disclosure, I didn't even know what the legislature was during that time period, not at a state level at least. Constituent was not a word I think I'd ever heard of before. And you know, that's actually one of the reasons why I've been such a passionate advocate for civic education in our public schools, everybody. But I didn't really know what happened at our State House, but I had gotten a job offer because I spoke fluent Spanish and I came from this community. And there was a rep back then who wanted somebody who had deep community ties and was invested in the community and could provide those constituent services, which I got the opportunity to learn all about after accepting that position, working at the State House, and getting to learn as a legislative aide in the House of Representatives about all the great things that our state government can do, investing in early education, healthcare, public safety, transportation, access to mental health services, fighting the disease of addiction, fighting against climate change and for environmental justice, fighting for women's rights, fighting for adequate funding for our historical societies, yes? And there we go, yes. Don't think I did not get the calls about this building while I was your senator. We did, and we were happy to support, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I learned about all of these different investments and policy decisions that can be made to contribute back to our communities in a meaningful and positive way. And I fell in love with the work. I fell in love with the work of serving in state government and helping people in our community in that way. And I didn't know that that opportunity had existed up until that point. I had done the work in the community centers, you know, and I know we were just talking about the Council on Aging, right? And learning about how to make investments, you know, working in the trenches alongside of folks in the community, but I'd never really gotten the opportunity to think about how I could be helpful and serve in working on policies and looking at funding as being a priority for our communities. And I got that opportunity to learn about that as a legislative aide. And it was a wonderful experience. And I got to help with constituent services and work alongside of many of you to promote positive change. So I learned all these wonderful things, but I also, during my very short stint working as a legislative aide at the House of Representatives, as a younger woman in my 20s, so again, just last year, I learned about the flip side of how our government can operate when there's no accountability. And during my time working there, I was actually sexually harassed while I was working at our own state house as a legislative aide in the House of Representatives. And the way that they thought it was appropriate to deal with me and to deal with that harassment to make it stop happening was, you guessed it, to just fire me. That way the problem would go away and everything could go back to normal again. So after being sexually harassed, I was fired from my position due to the circumstances surrounding that harassment. But I wasn't just let go from my position. I was also on my way out the door forced in order to receive a 6 weeks severance package out of about a $30,000 a year salary. Can you imagine what that is? Wow. I was required to sign away my right to speak about what happened. Just for a 6 week severance package. This wasn't for some big, huge settlement or anything like that. Not like it would make it any better, but just to be able to move on from that very challenging experience, our own state house, our own House of Representatives, through the Speaker of the House's office, required that I sign away my right to talk about what I had seen, witnessed, and experienced up at our own state house amongst some of the most powerful politicians in Massachusetts. But I didn't let them get rid of me or keep me quiet. I didn't leave state government like they told me to do. I instead decided to run for state rep myself, and a little over a year later, made my way back into that same chamber that fired me as the youngest woman serving in the House of Representatives at that time. Thanks to you. You were where it all started, my friends.
What year was that?
That, Stan, is that you? I can't see.
Yes.
Hi, Stan. That was 2012, I believe. Yes. Yeah, 2012. Long time ago now at this point. And when that occurred, friends, I knew it was my responsibility to fight like hell for other working families who, like my family was, and maybe for different reasons, but who, for others, who have also been dismissed or ignored or disenfranchised or isolated or shamed away from a system in state government that just isn't working for all of us the way that it could and the way that it should. And I took on that battle regarding those taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreements in the House of Representatives as your state representative. And that's a fight that I ended up taking with me to the state Senate, where I eventually was able to pass an amendment to the Senate's rules package as your state senator that actually banned the abuse of non-disclosure agreements in the state Senate. And Stan, I know this is the Historical Society, that was 2018, you can write that down. And we ended up banning the abuse of those NDAs, that's what we call them for short, in the state Senate, making sure that the Senate is not able to use NDAs anymore, using your taxpayer dollars to silence people, whether it be for sexual harassment, whether it be for harassment in general, whether it be for discrimination, abuse, outright corruption. It's not okay for your tax dollars to be abused to hide inappropriate actions or outright illegal actions or unethical actions by powerful politicians or others in order to protect the inappropriate or unlawful activity that is occurring. And while we did pass that provision that I filed, it was actually my first amendment that I filed, and it was the first amendment filed that session, and it was the first amendment on the rules package that day as well. It was amendment number 1, and I remember saying how ironic, this is pretty cool because when you think about what NDAs do, they silence, right? They silence. They don't. They are intended to keep you quiet. They are intended to shut you down and prevent you from speaking. They're intended to force people into the shadows so that they don't talk about what happened and let people know that there are concerns that we need to address and raise awareness about those things to help shine a light on the issues and challenges that are taking place in these communities and in these organizations. So filed that amendment, passed it. Fast forward, tried to get that passed in the House of Representatives, tried to get the governor at the time to sign off on legislation to make it law that these NDAs should not be abused across our state government in any of our state agencies, entities, or departments, that they should be banned across the board in terms of being able to be abused to cover up those unlawful and unethical behaviors. But we didn't see a lot of traction on that. I actually faced tremendous pushback. And is everyone okay if I grab my tea? I'm at home right now with y'all. Got a little chilly today, even though it's like almost summertime right now. And we didn't see a lot of traction on the movement of that bill to ban those NDAs once I had gotten that amendment passed in the Senate. So it was really an amazing experience to pass that first amendment, got a standing ovation for its passage because it was my inaugural speech that I gave on this issue. And I had spoken about my own challenges in order to, lobby my colleagues in the Senate to vote for this. And they did, and they supported it. Couldn't get it past the House of Representatives, couldn't get it signed off by the governor. And what ended up happening is, and I know a lot of you have experienced circumstances like this, maybe not on the floor of the Senate, but in your workplace, in your home, in wherever it is that you're hanging out and the folks that you're around. I was really, during that time period, targeted and shamed away from talking about what happened with the sexual harassment. It became very taboo to talk about it. And I remember having a really challenging time as a senator. I was the youngest woman in the Senate. So I was the youngest woman in the House of Representatives when I got there, thanks to all of you. Then you made me the youngest woman in the Senate, and I served the whole time there as the youngest woman in the Senate. And now I'm your youngest constitutional officer in Massachusetts. So thanks for believing in me, y'all. I appreciate that. I'm working hard. But I will tell you that it was tremendously challenging during that time in the Senate as the youngest woman to get my point across to state agencies, to the governor of the Commonwealth at the time, to the whole House of Representatives, about why this issue pertaining to these NDAs was important, because it just made people so uncomfortable to talk to me about it because all they could see was sexual harassment. And I was painted with this, just color of being sexually harassed. That's her. That's what she is. That's what she's about. That happened to her, so that's who she is. And it became very challenging for me to overcome during that time period, being able to advocate for something that I had direct experience with, that I wanted to use that experience to be able to help people to be able to make a difference for others while simultaneously battling the shame of the fact that it happened at all. Trying to raise awareness about how policies need to change and laws need to change, and we have a lot of work to do across state government. And even talking about these things in the most professional of manners and, explaining how folks across the board are, experiencing challenges because of these failed policies and outdated policies. It was challenging. And for a few years there in the Senate, it started to feel like I was banging my head up against a wall with just repeating the same thing over and over again and trying to say it in a different way that was more palatable for people who didn't want to talk about it, and say words like transparency and accountability, while we were talking about these issues, because saying the phrase sexual harassment was too taboo and too tough to say. So we had to pivot and talk about this from a different angle and a different perspective that was more easy to accept in terms of having the discussion about abusing our tax dollars to silence people about really anything that's happening that we shouldn't be silencing them about. And during that time period, I found myself learning a lot about not just my own experience and the way that I wanted to use that to help to impact the lives of others, to help change things for the better by being an advocate. But in trying to navigate that circumstance, it actually, even though it was challenging, it turned out to be an opportunity, because I was able to learn about how to speak with people about very challenging situations. And when I talked about that issue, I was able to see things and put myself in their shoes and see it from their perspective of, maybe it's a little uncomfortable for them to talk about this, so let's talk about it from this other perspective. And here's the other perspective. It doesn't matter what these agreements are being used for, or what agreements in general are being used for regarding covering up inappropriate behavior. The fact of the matter is that it's your tax dollars. It's your tax dollars. Your tax dollars are able to be abused, and they're able to be abused to allow people to engage in inappropriate and unlawful behavior. We should not be in the business of silencing people about anything, using your tax dollars to do so. And during that time period, I started having people come to me about all of these different transparency initiatives and about other areas that we could increase accountability. And people would start talking to me about how, the legislature, which I knew was very opaque, I served there for 10 years, start talking to me about, what else is not transparent? Obviously, the use of these agreements covers up, what happened to people. Obviously, our tax dollars are used to hide things. You know what else is hidden, though? The votes of our legislators. You know what else is hidden? When people are getting their committee assignments, what does that process look like? You know what else is hidden? Issues pertaining to the budget. You know what else is hidden? Those committee processes and procedures that are decided in the dark. You know what else is hidden? Those conference committee conversations that should be had out with the public participation. And these issues started to just get raised to me in my conversations with people. And it started to really expand my understanding of the importance of transparency and accountability and accessibility. And I continued that fight regarding those NDAs alongside of all these other bills that I started to file. Things like, making sure that we had at least, an hour to read a bill before we were required to vote on it to become law. That never passed, by the way. Yeah. Things like making sure that our committee votes were posted online so you can hold your legislators accountable to make sure you know how we're voting. We fight a lot to make sure people have access to the voting booth we shouldn't be relinquishing our rights to find out how the people that we ended up getting access to the voting booth to vote for, how those people actually went and voted once we voted for them, right? So as a matter of transparency and accountability, I ended up working on a lot of these different issues in conjunction with the bills to ban the abuse of those non-disclosure agreements. And that work led me to consider the auditor's office eventually. And I had it raised to me a few times and had thought about it. And folks had said that's really something that you should consider. And then when the Auditor of the Commonwealth, my predecessor, announced that she was not seeking re-election, I did some soul searching. And I thought to myself, man, I've been doing the work of a legislator for 10 years at that time. I'd served 6 years as your state representative, then 4 years as your state senator, and ended up deciding to pursue the auditor's office, to be your state auditor, to be able to help to continue my work to increase transparency, accountability, and accessibility. And the mission of the auditor's office is to help make government work better. I know the way the legislature treats our office these days, you would think we were the FBI. But our office is actually full of folks, accountants, CPAs, and yes, attorneys and researchers, of course, but folks who are working hard to shine a light in the dark areas of state government and increase transparency and accountability around the use of your taxpayer dollars and processes and procedures for the purposes of helping people, for the purposes of making a difference, for the purpose of showing us all how we can and must do better in state government agencies. And one of the things that I was thrilled that I got to do most recently, alongside of the audit that we just did on the MBTA, the Department of Children and Families, we audited Elder Services, we've audited so many different agencies. A recent audit that I got to release was an audit of none other than settlement agreements, including those non-disclosure agreements. And I was able to take the work that we had done learning about those taxpayer-funded NDAs in the state legislature, and I was able to, yes, take my personal experience with those agreements and what I'd seen and witnessed at the State House, and make sure that my Office of State Auditor did a full, wide-ranging audit of multiple state agencies across state government that ended up finding about $40 million in settlement agreements, with a very large portion of those including confidentiality clauses such as non-disclosure agreements that silence workers across these state agencies. And we did a report on how they're being potentially abused in state government. I think the report was over 100 pages. It was a very large report. And we shined a light on those practices. And the result was that because of that report, the governor of the Commonwealth came out after our report urged her to do so and changed policies for every executive branch agency banning the abuse of non-disclosure agreements. Amazing. And something that occurred because of not being afraid to speak out about personal experiences and personal journeys. Our personal stories, they're so powerful, even if they're not as sexy or as interesting as maybe your neighbor's story is, and you don't think that your personal journey is something that's going to be incredibly inspirational to people. It is your life. It is your existence. It is what you have to give to the world, and it is our obligation and responsibility to share it, to shine our light. and to let people know what we've experienced, what we've seen, what we've witnessed, and to use it for good, to use it for good, to use it to be an advocate, to use it to help people. And I have to say that even after all of this time, since back then in 2012, when I got elected as the state rep for this area, advocated for the 10 years going through the state senate, been advocating for the last 2 years as your state auditor, talking about these issues. And I think this is I finished with my 12th year now being elected. I can't believe it. Even after 12 years of service up on Beacon Hill and being called a seasoned veteran lawmaker and a seasoned elected official up there, and we all as women know how much we love being called seasoned. Yes, we do. But even after all of this time, still, and I would say actually probably now more than ever, I am getting pushback about my personal experiences being problematic. And I am getting told to be quiet. Still, after all this time and everything that I just told you, these stories, these experiences that I've been sharing for 12 years, still, and more than ever, I would say, I still have the Speaker of the House telling me to be quiet. I still have the Speaker of the House telling me to stop personalizing the work that I am doing and trying still to gaslight and shame me away from talking about what has happened, the impacts of what has happened, and how we need to learn from what has happened to help to make government work better. And it has been an incredibly challenging time, friends, because we've been doing this great work and we've been putting out these reports, and I'm so blessed that I have such amazing staff in the auditor's office. Over 200 employees work in the auditor's office that I have the very great responsibility and privilege of managing and overseeing at 5 different offices across the Commonwealth. And they're doing great work to put out these reports and to hear from all of you and use what you're sharing with them from your personal experiences, that you want us to look at certain things that are impacting your families in your communities and personally. And they're working hard to work on those issues. But the Office of State Auditor right now is facing tremendous pushback. And it's facing tremendous pushback because I forgot when I started to speak out so loudly and assertively and candidly and clearly as most Methuen people do. I forgot that I'm a woman. And I forgot that I'm not expected to be as loud as I've been. But I just tell them, guys, I'm not yelling, I'm just Italian. That doesn't seem to work with them now. Right. And I will tell you something. It has been very interesting because I do have to say, I've been, for all the challenges growing up, and all of us have had our own version of our challenges, right? But with the challenges that I faced growing up, something that I didn't experience in this community, which I really do want to say thank you to you so much from the bottom of my heart, I didn't experience the level of shock when a woman like me spoke here as I have there. This community, I feel like has done nothing but push me to speak up and push me to speak louder and push me to be stronger in my approach towards the work that I've been doing for our community. And that's been my experience with you. So I count myself as incredibly blessed, and that has actually been what has buoyed me up at the State House when I get the pushback, when I get shamed and blamed for speaking up and told to get back into line and to calm down and get painted, you know, with this brush of having some vendetta. When I come back home, it is this community that buoys me in that fight up at the State House, because this community has always told me, keep going, keep speaking, keep standing up. And that's why when Joanna called me to come here, I mean, I couldn't think of anything I would rather do than come back and to be with all of you, especially during this incredibly challenging time where you may have heard that we're trying to audit the legislature. And we're doing that because 72% of you, don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass you if you were part of the 28%, it's fine. Water under the bridge, nobody's perfect. But 72% of y'all went to the polls and you told me to audit the legislature. And you made it law that I am legally mandated and required to use the power of my office to audit our state legislature the same way that I audit all of these other state entities, the same way I was able to audit those settlement agreements and non-disclosure agreements across state entities, finding that $40 million in those settlement agreements, exposing some of the challenges and fighting for reforms, which started happening due to that. That's what you told me to do for our state legislature. And right now, because of my personal experience that I've shared for 12 years, because of my advocacy against harassment and discrimination and abuse in state government, because of my sharing my personal experience with witnessing the abuse of taxpayer dollars, and because I've spoken out on those matters, we have legislators saying that they get to break the law because I'm sharing my personal experience. And that because I have any personal experiences with anything pertaining to anything I'm working on, that makes me unfit to do my job. But I actually think the opposite. I feel like it is those very experiences that they're trying to shame me out of talking about that actually make me even more qualified to do the job. I know where to look. I know what the challenges are. I've experienced them myself. I've seen what has happened in our House of Representatives through the years. I've seen the abuses, not just with me, with others, many others through the years. I've seen what goes on in the state Senate. I've seen the increase in the lack of transparency and accountability through the years. It's gotten worse and worse. And I have been witness to that. And I have been loud about what I think about that. And I have told you what I think about that over and over again. But it is that very thing that has been weaponized against me and my office to break the law, to violate the law, and to hide what's going on with your taxpayer dollars. And it is absolutely shameful what's going on. And it has, for this season, been incredibly challenging for us to continue to press on and to fight the good fight and to keep speaking up when every day that you speak up, somebody's telling you to shut up. Every day. Every day that you say what is happening and you sound the alarm about what you're witnessing across state government, is another day that somebody's saying that you're not credible or you're not qualified because you dare to speak and you dare to say the truth about what's going on. Now, I'm telling you this because I want to let you know I am not giving up. But I need to tell you why. I'm not giving up because of the incredible encouragement that I've been receiving, especially from this community, especially from those of you who I actually credit with being the reason why I've been able to be in service in this regard at all. When I knocked on your door 13 years ago and asked you to take a chance on me, and you did, and every day when I go in there and they are berating the work of our office and badgering us for trying to follow the law and do a basic audit of what's happening with our taxpayer dollars, I am reminded of where I come from, and I still live right down the street, the next exit down off the Merrimack Street exit, at my home in Methuen, and I am reminded of why I started this to begin with. And it can be overwhelming in the Office of State Auditor sometimes because it's such a big state. It's 351 cities and towns, everybody. 351. And I thought as a state rep with 4 cities and towns, I was overwhelmed back then. But 351 cities and towns, it's a lot. It's a lot. And coming home to all of you is so grounding and so healing. And it reminds me of why I started doing this work and why I need to continue doing this work. And it is because there are so many people who are relying on us to stay strong, to keep up the fight, to make sure that we are standing up to the bullies, that we are not allowing them to rule the school, so to speak, and that we are standing up for those who don't have the opportunity to stand up for themselves, who need us to keep speaking out for them, who need us to keep standing up for them, people who don't have the platform that I have been given to be able to use to help, to heal, to provide healing to our government, to people, to our communities, by speaking truth and speaking truth in love. And we have an opportunity not just to change and analyze and reform processes and procedures and just do, math reports for everybody, but we have an opportunity to change lives with these reports. We did an audit of the Department of Children and Families recently. We were able to shine a light on how mental health services for children in the system across our state need significant improvement. And a lot of folks, might think when they think about the auditor's office, they think, green eye shades and pencils. And while sometimes I do rock the green eyeshadow, I see you in your green today. Green eye shades are not necessarily my thing. I'm a policy person, and I really like working on policy reforms and being an advocate. But these audits are reports, and they report not just on the challenges that they identify, they also report on potential solutions to the challenges that we identify. And when we identified issues with mental health services, such as children being prescribed in DCF custody psychotropic and antipsychotic medications with little to no oversight, while not being provided with a therapist as was required for them to be provided with, we were able to call for reforms at DCF. We were able to demand that they have a court-appointed advocate and that somebody stand with these children and say that they have rights too, just because they come from families that maybe, aren't putting them in the best situation. That once they're in DCF custody, it is our responsibility in state government to ensure that they receive the best care possible, that they are protected, and that we do everything we can to protect them. Changing lives. our elder affairs audit that we did recently. Found out that the Office of Elder Affairs was allowing elder abuse and neglect cases to go unreported to our district attorney's offices, where there were supposed to be reports going to the DA's offices so they could take action and make sure that our elders were protected. We actually ended up finding out that that wasn't happening. We produced the report, we called for changes. You think about all these different things having to do with maybe the work that the administration's doing or that legislators are working on, but you don't always think about the Office of State Auditor as being able to have that type of an impact. But that is the work that we are doing in the State Auditor's Office. And that is the work that I'm committed to continuing to do on your behalf. But I will tell you, I cannot continue doing this work on behalf of folks in our communities without your continued support. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And as we press on for justice, this is a Martin Luther King Jr. quote, as we press on for justice, let's be sure to move with dignity and with discipline, using only the weapon of love. And that is what we are going to continue to do in the Office of State Auditor's Office, because love is a powerful, powerful weapon. And we know that at the federal level right now, we're not seeing a lot of it. But here in Massachusetts, I know that we can come together. I know that we can put our political partisanship, our differences aside for the purposes of making sure that we're uplifting one another in our community on what our shared values are. And I can tell you that the ballot question that we did and this audit of the legislature, you know, one thing that it's taught me, out of many things, but one big thing that it's taught me is the power of community and the power of people coming together and putting their differences aside to make sure that we can make bold and meaningful change. You see, when I work on different issues, I will see that it becomes more partisan in nature from time to time, and you'll see a divide. It's this side versus that side. When I worked on the legislative audit, people from both sides, the left and the right, came together. And they said, we all want good government. We all want transparency. We all want accountability. We all want to know how our taxpayer dollars are being spent. And we're going to work together to make it happen. And because that happened, we were able to succeed. Because that continues to happen, we will continue to succeed. But I am making it my mission to continue to come out in our communities and say, keep sticking together. Keep loving each other. Keep loving our neighbors and our communities, and let's stick together. Let's keep up this fight, and let's keep making sure that we are working together to make government work better. That's my commitment to you. I ask that you stick by me. I'll stick by you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Joanna, because I know we have a lot of questions to get to today. Maybe.
Has the fact that we have a governor and a lieutenant governor and women helps? Does it make things better?
Yes, it has. I will say that does not mean that we go without challenges.
No, I know it's not perfect, but it is better than
It's better.
it
It's
should be,
better.
hopefully.
It's better. You know, I think that it's better because when we have very strong disagreements, there's less patronizing happening during the disagreement, because we will have very strong disagreements. And you may have heard I'm asking my colleagues in government, the men and the women, to support the legislative audit. Not getting very far with that, trying to take this issue to court now. But, thank you. Let me know, we'll send the Attorney General another letter. I'm sure she's thrilled I keep talking about this. But we do work together on a host of issues. And I think that the difference is, you know, since this is Women's History Month, we're talking about women's issues, the difference is that when we have these challenges, it is it's level. It's a level conversation. You know, it's not, you're not being spoken down to or feel like you're getting pat on the head as much, right? But the disagreements still exist, as they should, because we are all leaders doing very important work and have different styles and different approaches to fighting for the issues that are important to our shared communities and our shared values. So it's great. It's the way that transparent democracy should function in that regard. And, you know, I hope that will trickle down to our legislature, too.
Do we have more questions? I can pass around the microphone.
Diana, are there other states with legislatures that are more transparent than ours that you're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, even I would say Florida, New Hampshire, Connecticut.
Interesting.
Yeah, there are a lot of states that have different standards of just even their legislative websites, for example. And actually, I'm going to point you to our legislative audit that was posted on my website, mass.gov/auditor. And if you scroll down and you click on the audits, like where the audit section is, there'll be on that page an audit of the general court. So I conducted an audit of the general court because that was part of my campaign promise when I ran for auditor. And it was over 70 pages. And the audit that we conducted, though it was very well done, our staff did a great job, they didn't cooperate with it at all. So we did an entire report without the cooperation of any legislators that were willing to give us information, show us how tax dollars are spent. So we did write the report, and what we tried to do so that it had some substance that was meaningful is look at what was publicly available and accessible. And we looked at their websites, and we looked at their different web pages, and we did a comparative analysis between our website functionality and transparency, and we compared it to different states and how they did and how they scored. And we did that comparative analysis that you can see. Yeah. Yeah. We're actually ranked as the least transparent legislature in the entire nation by almost every good government group. And this last year, we were also ranked as the least effective as well. So it's most of the good government groups come out with those standards, and they actually have the charts of the different states, whereas we audit in the state and not out of the state. I think that those good government groups, if you Google that stuff, they can, you'll read about that. There's a lot of articles about that recently, especially. Yeah.
So one of the questions that I had was, to be able to do your work, you need people to know about it, right? To have force behind the reports that you put together. How, in today's poor newspaper, news reporting environment, what tools do you have to get the story out so that people know what's going on and can act on it?
Social media.
Okay.
I mean, I come out to all of these things. I will say social media is where people are. You know, they're on there posting photos about their kids and their lives and what they're doing that's fun and the food that they're eating that day and all of that fun, exciting stuff. And it's where people are. It's a space that people are in community and talking to one another about different issues. So yes, we send out press releases, you know, as is kind of what most government officials do. And we talk to the media, as is our responsibility, so we can get the word out there to folks. But we also post to social media. And I've actually, that's been the thing, actually, that I've been most criticized about recently. It's funny that we actually are talking about this, even just this week. The Speaker of the House talking about how upset he is that I tweet. And
Hey, I followed your walk.
thank you. I appreciate you. See? She's the one. I told you it works. Yeah. Yeah. I'll talk about it. It's how people communicate. It's how people communicate. And look, my response was, the Speaker's not upset that I communicate that I speak. The Speaker's not upset that I speak on social media. The Speaker's just upset that I speak. It's really as simple as that, you know. And we have a big following on some of these social media sites, so we can get the word out there pretty quickly if there are shenanigans going on at the State House. And maybe not everybody here is going to follow that, but the reporters are on our social media, so it spares us from having to draft up a formal press release, host a press conference, organize all of it. I can just, in a moment's notice, like I used to be able to do when I served in the legislature, I would get up on the floor if there was a shenanigan occurring, and I would walk over to my desk and I would stand up and put my microphone up and I would just start talking about what happened and giving my opinion on the floor of the Senate. I don't have that ability anymore being the auditor. So when things happen, it's sort of the only way that I can get my message out there, because I can't walk over to a microphone just at any point and just start talking about what's happening and get on the record that way. So I do use social media. I will tweet, I will post stuff, and then a lot of times a lot of that is picked up by the press and they put it into the local papers and what have you. But that's what we have. We do have a newsletter too. If you want to get signed up for that, please feel free. It's not as busy as it used to be when I was a legislator, sending out all these different things, because you're taking votes a little bit more often as a legislator to report on. Well, used to be that way at least. But in the auditor's office, we'll send out, a newsletter every, few months or so after we've done, enough reports to warrant a newsletter. So you can sign up for that as well if you'd like, and let me know. We'll get you signed up. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Diana, thank you. Happy to have voted for you. So
Thank
my
you.
world is I do operational audits of corporations. And much like you, what you find is rather stunning. And organizations get into trouble. And you're brought in, and what I find, and you'll relate to this, is that I get a lot of resistance. Because in what I've realized over time, and I'm speaking what we all know, the people who resist you on the audit and transparency are usually the ones responsible for the problems. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm casting a wide net here. So as you've gone through your exercise, and I applaud it, and I also voted for the measure, which is, as you said, law. We seem to disregard it both at this level and the federal level these days. How much transparency is there, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but how much transparency is there for the people resisting you?
How much transparency
Yeah,
is
I
there
mean, do
for
we
the-
know who's pushing back?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And how do we find out more?
Oh, look, I love everybody, but the House of Representatives just went in and voted down the audit and voted against following the law blatantly. There was an amendment filed, and it was voted against. It just said that the House of Representatives will follow Chapter 11, Section 12 of the Massachusetts General Laws. That's the audit law. And nearly all of the colleagues in my party, unfortunately, because I am a registered Democrat, proudly, by the way, this was a bipartisan issue, though. And it did get shot down, unfortunately, and it speaks to the tremendous amount of power that the Speaker wields over the House of Representatives, and that is very much the problem, is the power that exists up at the State House, the culture of power, where just a few people hold all of the power, and they weaponize it against our communities, and they manipulate it to demand that legislators fall in line, take votes that maybe they don't even really want to take, in order to feel like they're able to get work done up there, or fit in, or not be ostracized or alienated from their colleagues. So it's been a challenge recently, but there is little to no support up there right now on Beacon Hill, which is why I spend so much time out at these wonderful events with you.
Well, thank you. And we're trying really hard on this end, electing all the women in the high state offices. But we'll keep trying. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions?
I was going to ask the question of, will you name names? So thank you. a lot of what you've been talking about has made me think, and you know, I've been in the news business. I've seen a lot of it up close as a reporter. Just a really long history of particularly speakers of the Massachusetts House going down in one corruption scandal or the next. And here you are fighting this fight. And I'm just wondering, do you ever think about what is it about this particular legislature that is so difficult to push into the light? Because it seems like this has been going on for at least the last 55 years.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty, you know, I'm sure you know that already. You know, I mean, it's it's really not more than that. It's you know, I I grew up in really conservative churches growing up. My mom, like I said, was 17 when she had me, and for as much as I was protected from getting, you know, too much into trouble, there was also a toxic side to the way that I was raised in some of these places, where it was too controlling. And it was very challenging to be able to just, you know, step outside without sinning, right? And I'm not getting into a religious conversation over here, don't worry, y'all. But, because, you know, we're talking about politics, we have to try to bring religion in, right? But I bring that up because it's very similar in the legislature to what I experienced as a child, being raised in some of these very, very controlling church settings, where it's almost cult-like. It is. It's almost cult-like. And you know, I talk about my experiences during my childhood, and I had so many wonderful things that I got out of those experiences. But also, you know, if you messed up and did something wrong or were viewed as being out of alignment with the church, you were ostracized, shamed, alienated, demonized, and kind of like put to the side as bad. You know, unwanted, bad, don't be around everybody else, right? And the way that the legislature operates is not much different. You know, there's the rostrum. The speaker or the Senate president gets up on the rostrum and, you know, oversees what's happening in the membership, the congregation, the membership of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and dictates what everybody is to do. As much as it's viewed as, oh, everybody's having conversations there and debating, really the decisions are mostly made. You know, I served there, like I said, for 10 years, and the vast majority of the time, when we were debating an issue, it had already been decided. We were just being given our marching orders, and we were given the illusion that we were actually debating an issue. Because, you know, they'd let us say what we wanted, but it was already determined what was going to happen. And if you went against it, you were shamed, demonized, isolated, pushed to the side, and made to feel like you don't belong. In a very controlling environment, in a very abusive environment that was just inappropriate. It's wrong. It's wrong. And that is still occurring. And I think, you know, people ask me, and it's just been so interesting just growing through all of this through the years and doing introspection, right? And people will say to me, well, why are you the way that you are? How come you stand up and say this? And why isn't everybody else saying something about this when it's very clear to the vast majority of people what's going on? And I have to say, it's a situation where it's groupthink mentality that I've seen, and a lot of cognitive dissonance occurs. And you know, you think about those situations where people talk about the Kool-Aid cup going around, and everybody's drinking out of the Kool-Aid, and just I would say metaphorically speaking, it's kind of similar. Folks go in, there's the metaphorical Kool-Aid that gets passed around during the trainings that are provided, and people are given their marching orders. Everyone kind of looks at each other and, oh, is this okay if I do this? Is that okay if I do that? And I think people are scared to stand out too much or do something wrong, to be accused of not being a team player, to be accused of not supporting their party and not supporting their party initiatives. So they're afraid to say what they think about a bill that maybe they have a challenge with, some of the provisions, because they'll get accused of going against their party platform. And it's shaming and blaming tactics. And I think that one of the reasons why I have been so triggered by it, and maybe others haven't, is I think a lot to do with the way that I was raised. And I think that, me leaving that environment growing up and having that awareness of the damage that it can do to community and to you personally, that type of control, and those bullying tactics, those shaming tactics in some of those situations that I did grow up in, when I saw it in the legislature, and I couldn't articulate it back then, but hindsight's 20/20, right? Looking back at that, it's very similar. It's very similar. And those cult-like patterns exist, and they've triggered. And I look, and I see it, and I can't not speak out about it. Someone needs to say something. It's wrong. It shouldn't be happening. We need to fight to change it. And that's why I always talk about how we have to come together across party affiliation and across party lines, because Beacon Hill is no longer about Republican or Democrat. I'm your youngest Democrat constitutional officer, campaigned on my platform, and won the primary, went on to the general election to win that. And yet it's my own party that is trying to get rid of me right now. A lot of folks that just wish I would just leave the party. It's not about Democrat, Republican anymore up on Beacon Hill. It's about people with power and everybody else, the rest of us. So that's why when I come out into our communities, my values are still the same. I still, carry my beliefs and the values that I fought for as a Democrat. To me personally, that's important to me personally. If you're a Republican, I'm sure your values are important to you, in your party affiliation. But I keep telling people, we can't even have the debates that we used to have about things like tax policy, because the conversation is completely controlled by about 2 or 3 people behind closed doors. People with power and everybody else. So that's why I've been going around the state telling people, please continue to come together. Because unless we continue to come together, we are going to continue to see what is turned into a very tyrannical form of governance up on Beacon Hill, with a very dictatorial, authoritarian style of leadership, where only a few people are in charge. The law is able to be broken, and the rest of us sort of feel helpless in being able to do anything about it. That's not acceptable, so let's not accept it. Let's come together and put our partisan differences aside on this issue, at least, and make sure we keep standing up for what's right here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, actually. First is, I was listening to Jim and Marjorie the other day, and the Attorney General was on, and she was, you weren't there, so you couldn't say what part you have, but why is she blocking you?
The legislature funds her budget, potentially, could be
Yeah.
one of the issues with wanting to help me to sue the legislature. And I could see how that would present a challenge. And I respect that the Attorney General has her own decision-making authority and the right to make her own decisions about whether or not she wants to defend the people of this Commonwealth on question 1, the audit law, and enforce the law. That being said, it is her job to enforce the law, and what is happening right now is because she refuses to take a position. I have been pushing her to take a position, and I have said to our wonderful Attorney General, Madam Attorney General, if you do not want to enforce the law on behalf of 72% of the voters of this Commonwealth who mandated that this audit of the legislature occur, then please just say so that I am allowed under law to have a different attorney represent my office on this issue on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth. That is not happening because what is happening is legislative leaders are doing everything they can, working with people whose budgets they fund, for example, to block my access to court. Because they know very well that the arguments that they have made are complete baloney. And I have said time and time again, I worked to pass this ballot initiative. Thank you, everyone, for voting for it. But I'm well aware that a judge could place limitations or say what they're going to say about the constitutionality or other things. And that's the way the system works. We understand that. But we have to be able to access the courts to get that decision so that we can all move forward, because legislators certainly aren't going to anytime soon, or probably ever, agree to be audited. So because I can't get access to the court, because the Attorney General is the attorney of record for state agencies, we are required to go through the AG's office to access the court. Because she refuses to take a position, and it's been months now, refuses to take a position. And I asked last year for this assistance too, and it was blocked. We can't get access to the courts, so we can't get access to a judge who can deem this to be constitutional, because it is, and allow us to conduct this audit of the legislature. Legislators are terrified of going to court over this issue, because it's easier for them to personally attack me and tell you all that I'm not able to do my job and all the reasons why they don't want me to be the one who does it. It's easier for them to just keep on berating me in the newspaper to try to convince you all that I shouldn't be doing this on your behalf. I'm a lot easier of a target than the Constitution is, because the Constitution is clear that it's there to protect the people, not the politicians, and see, that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid that a judge is going to say that truth and tell them to follow the damn law. So they won't go to a court with me. And they were asked yesterday if they would pursue a judicial opinion, which they have the right to do. My office has to go through the AG's office to access the court. They have language that permits them to go and to seek a judicial opinion if they deem something to be unconstitutional. And instead of saying that he would seek a judicial opinion, the Speaker of the House said, "Why would I seek a judicial opinion? I already told you what my opinion is." So because the Speaker views himself as being above the law, he's going to continue to break it and keep it out of court so a judge can't tell him to follow the law. And our Attorney General, who is really my only hope of getting access to the courts to make sure the law is enforced, because she is the law enforcement agent of this Commonwealth, she's refusing to represent us. And I say us because it really needs to stop happening that it's just me and everybody in the legislature. I am not 72% of the Commonwealth, but all you will hear is she this, she that, she can't do X, Y, and Z, she said this.
You need to get them paperwork that you haven't gotten. That's what she was saying. She's
Yeah.
asked you guys for paperwork, and you're not, and so you weren't there to defend or say anything. So that's
Well,
kind of how it was left.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is.
interesting.
It is going to be left that way, but the excuses are not going to be able to last forever. So, there's only so many times I can be told, people can be told on the radio that because I haven't done a good enough job to convince the Attorney General to do her job, that she's not going to do her job. if I didn't get her 1 ounce of paperwork, if I didn't answer one question, does that mean 72% of the Commonwealth is not represented because your auditor isn't an attorney? And because I can't figure out a way to convince the top law enforcement agent of the Commonwealth to pick up this fight and defend 72% of the people of this Commonwealth, that's not the responsibility of the auditor's office. That's the responsibility of the Attorney General's office. And what's happening right now is a lot of scapegoating, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of blaming, a lot of shaming, and a lot of diverting responsibilities onto, in particular, the auditor's office for what is the responsibility of other offices. And I do a lot of work with the Attorney General and with the governor and with a lot of the legislators, and we work on various issues. But the reality is that my office is not responsible for convincing the top law enforcement officer of this Commonwealth to enforce the law. That is the law. That is the job of the Attorney General. And I hope that, we come to a place where she is willing to at least let me know that she is unwilling to take on this role so that we can pursue litigation through a different attorney, because that would be an acceptable path forward too. Thanks.
I think my last question is just about NDAs in town politics and who's responsible for that situation, because it's happening everywhere and it's pretty intense.
You banned them here.
I'm sorry?
I think you banned them in North Andover, I'm pretty sure. Stan, yeah?
Yeah.
I think
Does that mean they're really...
Sasha, my transition director, actually led the charge on that. I gotta give her credit for that. So they were banned in North Andover, is my understanding. I don't know exactly what the language said, years ago. And different communities can ban them, and you did ban them in North Andover, thankfully. I don't know about non-disparagements, different confidentiality clauses. There are different types of NDAs, but, or I should say there are different types of confidentiality provisions. But in the town of North Andover, I believe that in town meeting, that you banned them, and it was during, I think it was during the Me Too movement, or following the Me Too movement, when I had gotten up on the floor, I had broke my non-disclosure agreement. Methuen also banned them, and the city of Boston actually just banned them as well, following some challenging circumstances in the city of Boston. They read the audit report that we did, and they took the audit report and they talked about it, and they banned non-disclosure agreements on the Boston City Council and using them there as well. So that was really great to see. But at the town, at the city level, certainly you can work to increase transparency and accountability at the municipal level as we work to pass the bill that I filed to just ban them across the board, so we don't have to wait on each city and town to do the right thing with that. Yeah. But thanks, North Andover. Y'all were, I think, the first. I gotta check. It might have been Methuen was first, but it might have been you guys, Stan, that were first to ban them.
I want to thank you again for coming. Real quick, is there anything, apart from supporting you electorally, of course, and into the future, is there anything that we could continue to do to assist you, perhaps, to get the Attorney General to move forward? Do you think phone calls to the office or letters would help?
Yes, 100%. Please, please call your legislators and call the Attorney General. And full disclosure, you are not going to hear a great response necessarily when you contact these folks. Folks are very, very, very frustrated at me personally right now. I don't have any other way forward, though, than asking for people to advocate and ask people to enforce the law, follow the law, and let my office conduct the audit that you told me to do. But a lot of my colleagues right now are not happy with me and not wanting to look at me in the eyes when I walk into the room, not say hello anymore. I think we're going to move past this time of this challenging time, and that we'll get through this. But for the next however long it takes, we do need to keep advocating. Just be prepared. The response might not be what you necessarily expect. I've heard a lot of folks say, no, they do support the audit. No, they did vote for the audit. They just also voted against it when they went in recently. But then hear about why they think that that vote was actually meant to support the work of my office. Because they're going to have an outside firm do it that the Speaker can control instead of the Office of State Auditor, who's independently elected through a democratic voting process where all of you independently vote for me. I hear a lot of folks talking to me about Doge right now. Aside from not being a billionaire, I am also your independently elected auditor following the law that was democratically voted for during a democratic process when you all went to go vote for this law. So this is the democratic process having been followed. This is democracy in action, and we want a transparent democracy. So please, let folks know, ask them to support this, and we could speak the truth. We could speak the truth in love, and let them know that, hey, we're just looking for the law to be followed. That's it. Please follow the law, support the auditor's work so that we can get this done. This is not just me. This is not just my office. This is all of you. So yes, thank you. Please email, call, and let them know. Post to social media. And you know what else? We talked about getting the word out there. Please write letters to the editor, Write letters to the editor. Let folks know that we need legislators and the Attorney General and the governor to support this if this is ever going to happen, if we're ever going to get access to the courts, if we're ever going to make sure that the law isn't overturned and that it's actually followed. It needs to stay in the public domain because if they can just keep trying to shame me away from speaking and keep me quiet, then their thought is, well, maybe people will just forget and that they can just keep talking about everything that's happening at the federal level and everyone will just forget about what's happening at the state level. Just keep deflecting to what's happening at the federal level and talking about that, and maybe nobody will notice what's going on right here at home at our own state house. That's what's happening. So if we can keep it in the public domain, write those letters to the editor, post to social media, keep the pressure on, that's what we have. That's kind of the hope that we have. So great question. Thank you.
All right.
It is actually pretty high right now. I have to say, it's been challenging. We get, some folks who are a bit obsessive and trying to diminish the work of the office and antagonize the folks in our office. The Senate subcommittee the other day was very rude to the professional auditors in my office who went to meet with them to talk about what the legislative audit would look like. The Senate subcommittee treated the meeting with the professional, non-elected, non-political auditors on my team who've worked in the office for years, many long before I got there, treated that meeting with them like it was a presidential debate in front of the press and just debated them trying to win an argument and win a debate about constitutionality and why they disagreed that I should, be the one doing the audit. And the professional auditors in my office, most of them were horrified at the encounter because they'd never dealt with that before. Walking into a room with powerful senators, berating the work of our office and debating them. They're audit staff. They were walking in to talk about how to comply and to do their jobs and, here's the documents we need and this is the process we go through. And the senators weaponized it against them to try to beat them in a debate. And it was shameful, to be honest. And I was very disappointed with that. So now they've lost the privilege. I'm talking to my professional audit staff, and I have informed them that they will speak to me directly if they have anything to say, or our general counsel who's helping with the lawsuit. But that's the point that we're at. So we are trying to keep the morale up on the team by, essentially, working on all the other audits that we're doing and keeping the focus on that. And do you have the water? Okay, good. We'll put that there for you too, just in case. And they're doing okay.
Legislative colleagues that come to your defense or support you, behind closed doors, they say we're
My colleagues across the aisle have been very supportive, but I have to tell you, This is a nonpartisan issue. The Democratic State Committee here in Massachusetts and the Republican State Committee both endorsed this initiative. Progressive Mass and our local Mass Fiscal Alliance endorsed this as well. Very conservative, right-leaning group and a very left-leaning progressive group endorsed, went out, campaigned for this, did everything they could. So I have gotten some support. It's been mostly from across the aisle. And that's not because Democrats do not support this. Democrats support this, let me be clear. So do Republicans. So do unenrolleds. So does Green Rainbow Party affiliates. Okay, Workers' Party, Libertarians, you name it, most folks support this. It is the establishment up on Beacon Hill, most of which do happen to have a D next to their names, okay, that are in power, that are not acting democratic in any way. They are acting in an anti-democratic manner. But the way they are acting is not reflective of working families across our communities, regardless of what our party affiliation is. And I did get one of my colleagues on the Democratic side, Michelle Badger from Plymouth. She's a new rep, and she voted off, and I saw the little light go on, and I go, is that a light? She voted for us. It was the only Democratic light that was different than all the rest in the sea of red. There's just one little green light in the corner I saw, and it was my Democratic colleague, Michelle Badger, a good friend from Plymouth County, who was brave enough and courageous enough to say, I told my district I was going to support this, so I have to do it. It's scary up there to do that. It doesn't seem like it would be. But when you have everybody sitting around you and staring at you and trying to shame you away from doing what your district told you to do, it's powerful. So there was one woman who stood up to that, and I'm very proud of her. And, you know, she's got a bright future. And she just said, I just did the right thing. My district asked me to do this, so I did. I said I was going to vote for the audit, so I voted for it. I wish it was like that for others, but we're going to work on it. And I think just keeping talking about it is where it's at. Yeah.
I bet she's not going to get a leadership role in one of the committees.
Well, I told her she wasn't up for one anyways yet, so she just started. She'll get reelected, right? I mean, you know, you can't get appointed to those leadership committees unless you get reelected, right? So, and I would actually go a step further and say a lot of those leadership roles are not leadership roles. They're lackey in nature, you know? And that's not with everybody. There are a lot of people in there that are doing the role of being a chair very well, and they're doing a great job. And then there are some, many actually, who, you know, might not. And they take their marching orders from the Speaker and Senate President and use the role to carry water for them. So it can be an illusion sometimes too. Yes?
Do you still come into each town and city and audit their accounting?
No, and I get a great question. I do not audit municipalities. I could audit a municipality if they get a full town vote, for example, and your select board or city council and the mayor vote for it.
Because my husband was
Yeah.
in North Andover, and the State Department came in and audited the books.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore?
No, does anyone know how you do your auditing here in town? City auditor, town auditor?
Outside auditor.
Yeah, an outside auditor that comes in, yeah. And the Inspector General provides the independent oversight check on municipalities if there is a problem with anything. So where I can go into state agencies and just take a look without them wanting me to.
Staff that came in and
Yeah.
did it all around.
The Inspector General does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Inspector General. So the Inspector General here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is able to, without permission, go to any city or town and look at the books and look at the processes and the procedures and conduct an audit or an investigation. It actually happened in the city of Methuen when we had the police scandal that occurred, and
Well, they
all
come in
the,
every year
yeah.
in North Andover and would check,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
But that's 30, 40 years ago.
yeah. Yeah, they separate it in Massachusetts. You had a question too back here? Yeah.
Yeah, you get much support from the Globe? I mean, they have spotlight teams that do a lot of that activity, you know, point out the things that are going.
Well, I've never been endorsed by the Globe. However, I can say they have done a phenomenal job reporting on the issues around transparency and accountability. And they fully endorsed and supported our audit, and they fully supported even the audit that we completed. And they've done several editorials. So yes, they've been very supportive of the audit of the legislature. If I run for re-election or what have you, I think that it would be great if maybe we could try to work on that endorsement too. Maybe next time, Stan, maybe you could write a letter to the editor for me. But they've done a good job reporting on this. Yeah, for sure.
All right, any more questions?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.